He called her unqualified. So she opened his own security record on live TV. The tension in the CNN town hall was thick enough to stop conversation. Over 200 audience members filled the studio, and millions more were watching live. On the left sat Jasmine Crockett, calm, collected, her navy blue pantsuit unwrinkled under the harsh studio lights. In front of her, a simple black folder rested on the table like it didn't hold the weight of an entire career. On the right, former NSA advisor Victor Hanley adjusted his tie with surgical precision. At 58, with salt and pepper hair and decades of government service behind him, he looked every bit the Washington insider. And he knew it. "Frankly," he said, voice smooth but sharp, "I find it dangerous when individuals without any direct intelligence background claim authority on national security issues." The crowd reacted with a low murmur. Jasmine didn't flinch. Hanley continued, "It's not just about reading memos or sitting in oversight committees. It's about having your boots on the ground, something Congresswoman Crockett, unfortunately, has never experienced." Laughter rippled from a few seats in the crowd. Even the moderator hesitated before speaking. But Jasmine raised her hand gently. "If I may respond," she said, her tone calm but firm. Hanley leaned back, arms crossed, smirking. Inside, Jasmine took a slow breath. Here it comes again. The same patronizing tone, the same playbook. But this time, I brought mine too. "I appreciate Mr. Hanley's concern for operational experience," she began, glancing at the moderator. "But I'd like to clarify a few things. You see, oversight doesn't mean ignorance. And sometimes, oversight reveals more than action ever could." She placed one hand gently on the black folder. "I understand that many people assume I just read memos," she said, looking directly at Hanley. "But I also read internal audits, Inspector General reports, and incident logs." Hanley's smile faded a shade. The moderator, sensing the shift, asked, "Congresswoman Crockett, are you referring to a specific document?" "I am," she replied. Then, calmly, she opened the folder. The paper was crisp. The CNN camera zoomed in. A redacted security report appeared. Header, NSA Internal Review, Incident Number 204G, Classified Breach, 2019. Gasps. Victor Hanley blinked once, then again. The color drained slightly from his cheeks. "This is a public summary of a 2019 breach in protocol," Jasmine explained, her voice unwavering. "It details a situation in which an advisor, then assigned to overseas briefings, violated clearance protocol by accessing classified materials outside authorized hours." She paused. That advisor's name was Victor Hanley. The silence in the studio was no longer casual. It was electric. "I didn't leak that document," she added, turning slightly to the camera. "It was declassified 6 months ago. Anyone could have found it. But not everyone chose to." Hanley shifted in his seat, jaw tense. "This isn't about political points," Jasmine continued. "This is about who we trust to define national security, and whether credentials are earned or assumed." The moderator didn't speak. He couldn't. And Victor Hanley had no words left. Victor Hanley's throat moved, but no sound came out. For a man who once advised the president on foreign cyber threats, his silence now felt like a system crash. Visible, audible, humiliating. Jasmine didn't gloat. She simply waited. The studio was still frozen when the moderator finally broke the tension. Mr. Hanley, he said gently, would you like to respond to the Congresswoman's citation of this report? Hanley cleared his throat. Twice. That incident, he began, voice low, was reviewed internally. It was a clerical error involving late-night access during a high-alert week. I was cleared of intentional misconduct. True, Jasmine said immediately. The final report did not recommend criminal charges, but it did recommend reassignment. And it flagged your actions as, quote, a concerning lapse in procedural judgment by a senior official. A few audience members murmured in recognition. Others raised their phones, recording. Victor's jaw tensed. Congresswoman, are you implying that one outdated administrative note defines my decades of service? Jasmine leaned slightly forward. No, Mr. Hanley. I'm pointing out that the person dismissing my right to speak on national security once violated the very rules he claims I don't understand. The camera cut to Hanley's face. A thin line of sweat had formed along his temple. Jasmine turned to the audience now. The idea that someone must be part of the intelligence community to have credibility while dismissing congressional oversight is not only incorrect, it's dangerous. She let it sink in. I may not have worked inside the NSA, she said, but I've worked to hold it accountable, and I take that responsibility seriously. Hanley tried to recover. With all due respect, Congresswoman, political oversight is one thing. Field operations are another. You've never had to make a decision where lives were on the line. Her voice dropped to a steady, cold precision. You're wrong. He blinked. I have constituents who live under threat every day. I've fought for veterans who were denied care. I've stood up to corporations who placed profits over safety. No, I haven't held a gun in a war zone. But I've fought my own battles. On the floor, in the courts, and now, right here. There was applause. Quiet at first, then stronger and stronger. Hanley didn't speak again for the rest of the segment. The moderator looked shaken but composed. We'll take a short break. When we return, questions from the audience. As the lights dimmed for commercial, a CNN producer whispered to a colleague, "She just flipped the whole damn debate." Backstage, Victor's team was already scrambling, phones in hand, messages flying. And Jasmine? She sat still, folded her notes, and waited. Calm, ready, knowing that the real confrontation had only just begun. The commercial break had technically begun, but the energy in the room never dipped. The studio buzzed with low conversation, flickering phones, and side glances. The live stream chat exploded with comments like, Crockett came prepared. Bro got cooked with his own clearance file. Why is this not on prime time? Victor Hanley sat frozen in his seat, eyes locked on the desk in front of him. His microphone was off, but the redness in his face said enough. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett simply sipped water. From the shadows, her legislative aide leaned in and whispered, Exhibit B is ready if you need it. Jasmine gave a small nod. Only if he tries to spin this again. When the cameras resumed, the moderator returned with forced brightness in his tone. Welcome back. We're joined tonight by Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and former NSA advisor Victor Hanley. We now open the floor to questions from our studio audience. A young woman stood from the third row. This is for Mr. Hanley, she said into the mic. You said earlier that Ms. Crockett lacked the experience to speak on national security, but she just cited a breach you were directly involved in. Do you think that disqualifies you from this conversation? A murmur of agreement passed through the crowd. Hanley straightened, his voice clipped. No, I don't. Experience includes successes and failures. I've made tough calls under pressure. The Congresswoman, Jasmine interjected politely, isn't asking to be judged by your metric. She's asking for respect for her own. Applause, louder this time. Another hand rose. A middle-aged man in a veteran's jacket. My son served overseas. He watches these debates to see who actually cares about what happens to people like him. Ms. Crockett, what would you say to him tonight? Jasmine turned toward him. I'd say your son deserves more than talking points. He deserves leadership that's prepared, that listens, that doesn't need to dismiss others to sound smart. Her voice softened. And when people like Mr. Hanley question my background, they're not just challenging me. They're sending a message to every young woman, every outsider, every person without a security clearance but with a moral compass, that they don't belong. I'm here to say, we do. The room erupted. This time, not a few claps. Sustained applause rising from the back rows to the front. Even the moderator didn't hide his reaction. Thank you, Congresswoman. That was remarkably clear. Victor shifted in his chair, visibly rattled. But before he could regain footing, Jasmine turned slightly toward him. And for the record, she said, unfolding another document on the desk, I came here tonight expecting this exact exchange. She slid it toward the moderator. This is an archived communication from 2019 showing Mr. Hanley's staff requesting internal edits to remove breach language from a performance review. Victor's eyes widened. Let me be clear. I'm not here to embarrass you, she said, her tone colder now. I'm here because the public deserves honesty, and because national security should never be built on hidden mistakes and polished resumes. The audience sat stunned. For a moment, nothing moved. Just the hum of studio lights and a growing awareness among viewers across the country that something rare had happened. Jasmine Crockett wasn't just defending herself. She was rewriting the debate. CNN's control room was in controlled chaos. One producer turned from the live view monitor and muttered, "We're off script. She just hijacked the segment." Another, tapping at a laptop, responded, "And tripled the live view count in 10 minutes. Back in the studio, Victor Hanley looked like a man halfway through a storm without an umbrella. His team backstage was typing furiously, trying to feed him talking points via earpiece, but his posture remained tight, frozen, cornered. Jasmine, on the other hand, was calm. Too calm, some would say. The moderator, visibly navigating new waters, asked cautiously, "Mr. Hanley, would you like to clarify the internal edit request referenced by Congresswoman Crockett?" Victor paused. His voice, when it came, was shaky. There are always drafts. Performance reviews undergo revision. That's normal protocol in sensitive agencies. Jasmine didn't interrupt. She let the audience feel the spin. Then she simply asked, "Were you aware of the revisions?" Victor hesitated. I was informed after the fact." She turned to the camera. "That's not what the archived email shows." The screen behind them lit up with a still image. A blurred internal communication, date-stamped and watermarked. The highlighted section read, "Victor wants this phrasing softened. He says it could haunt us publicly." The studio sucked in air as one. Victor's voice rose, desperate now. "That's completely out of context. I was protecting agency reputation. That's my job." No, Jasmine replied coolly. Your job was national security, not reputation management. And that was the moment it changed. The authority in his voice had evaporated. The once unquestioned advisor now looked like a man caught in his own defense web. And Jasmine? She wasn't attacking anymore. She was commanding. Behind the scenes, Twitter chapter X was melting. This isn't a debate. It's a surgical dismantling. Crockett is doing in 10 minutes what hearings fail to do in hours. He brought a resume. She brought receipts. Fox News, MSNBC, and even C-SPAN were now showing clips mid-broadcast. The headline, scrolling at the bottom of CNN, read, "Live, Crockett cites security records against ex-NSA advisor." The moderator leaned forward, his voice softer. "Congresswoman, you've referenced a number of specific documents tonight. May I ask, were these prepared specifically for this event?" Jasmine smiled for the first time that evening. "Let's just say, I came ready for the usual double standard." The crowd reacted, laughter mixed with applause, the kind of laugh that says, "Finally, someone said it." Victor lowered his head slightly. He had no next move. And then Jasmine added quietly, "There's one more document, but I'll wait to see if he tries to deny it." That sentence didn't just land. It echoed. CNN's camera operators instinctively zoomed in. America had tuned in for a debate. They got a reckoning instead. Victor Hanley didn't respond. Not immediately. His eyes darted toward the moderator, toward the crowd, toward the camera lens. But never toward Jasmine Crockett. She leaned back slightly in her chair, her presence controlled but firm. The folder on the table in front of her was still partially open. One final sheet visible but untouched. The moderator hesitated, then turned gently. "Congresswoman Crockett, would you like to proceed?" She nodded. "I believe I should." From the folder, she drew out a sealed page with an agency watermark and a timestamp. 2020. Internal Oversight Referral. Victor Hanley. She held it up for just a moment, then placed it on the desk between them. "This is the document Mr. Hanley hoped wouldn't be brought up," she said, "because unlike the breach report, this one was never meant to be public." The studio fell silent again. Familiar now. Expected even. This referral outlines a formal warning issued to Mr. Hanley for pressuring a junior analyst to alter intelligence assessments related to civilian casualties in a foreign drone strike review. A beat. No one spoke. Victor's lips parted slightly. "That document was never verified," Jasmine cut in, not raising her voice, but changing its weight. "It was signed by your department head and countersigned by legal." The moderator stared, visibly unsure whether to intervene or let the storm play out. Jasmine didn't need a response. She turned to the audience now, not just in the room, but through the camera. Her voice lowered, took on a rhythm closer to storytelling than combat. "You were told I was unqualified, that I didn't belong in this conversation, that I didn't have clearance, experience, or the right background." She glanced at Victor without pausing. "But what I do have is accountability. I don't walk into rooms assuming I own the truth. I bring the truth with me." Applause started again, bigger this time. Some people stood. Others clapped with open phones in hand, recording every word. Backstage, CNN executives were already drafting headlines. At the table, Victor was still, almost sunken. Jasmine reached forward and calmly closed the folder. "This isn't personal," she said. This is policy. And if our policies are written by men who revise truth to protect themselves, we don't have national security. We have national theater. A standing ovation. The moderator looked at his notes, then gave up entirely. "We were going to end with closing statements," he said with a dry chuckle. "But I think that was it." Victor stood stiffly. "I wasn't prepared for a courtroom tonight," he muttered. Jasmine responded with only a glance. "You were. You just didn't bring your defense." As the broadcast ended, hashtags had already gone viral. #Crockett receipts, #Hanley shut down, #inside the debate, #she brought everything. Later that night, political analysts called it the most complete public dismantling of a national security figure in televised history. And Jasmine? She didn't gloat. She didn't even speak to press. She just walked out with her folder in hand, head high, prepared, as always.